Hi everyone! Today I'm going to start a new series of videos that will be following along the different paths from Tryhackme. So the first path we are going to follow along is the Web Fundamentals path, and for this first video we are going to do the first room, which is DNS in detail. So what is DNS? DNS, or Domain Name System, provides a simple way for us to communicate with devices on the internet without having to remember complex numbers. So instead of having to remember an IP address, we just have to remember those domain names, and then we send a request asking for the IP address for it. So for tryhackme.com, the IP address would be 104.26.10.229. So in fact, the DNS system is a hierarchy, which means there's a root domain, like what we call root domain servers, top level domain, second level domains, and subdomains. So the root domain is the .1. It's represented with a dot. Then after that we have what we call top level domains like .edu, .com, .gov, .dz, .fr, and so on and so forth. So there are two types of TLD, or top level domains. The one is generic, or we call it also GTLD, like the .edu for education, or .com for commercial, and so on and so forth. And there are also country-coded top-level domain like .dz, which is Algeria, or .ca for Canada. Then there is the second level domain, which is what you generally see when you're, like, for example, if we have google.com, tryhackme.com, mit.edu, and so on and so forth. So the second level domain is the part that comes just before the .com part. So for example here that would be Tryhackme. It comes just before .com. And these second level domains are limited to 63 characters. So, and those 63 characters would be, we can only use A to Z and 0 to 9 plus the hyphen character, but it can start or end with a hyphen or have consecutive hyphens. Then that we get to the subdomain level, like for example shop.tryhackme.com. Shop would be the subdomain. So a subdomain also has the same creation restrictions as the second level domain, so being limited to 63 characters and only able to use A to Z and 0 to 9 and hyphens, but cannot start with a hyphen or end with it or have multiple hyphen, like consecutive hyphens. We can also have multiple subdomains split with periods to create longer names, such as jupiter.servers.tryhackme.com, but the length, like the total length, must be kept under 253 characters or less. There's also the record types. So DNS record types are multiple. We talked first about the IP address. So for a domain names, we have an IPv4 address. That's what we saw in the first part. However, it's not just for that. Like the DNS isn't just for websites. and there are there are a lot of types of records, of DNS records. We'll see some of them, not all of them. So the first one would be an A record. It resolves an IPv4 to an IPv4 address. So we have, for example, a domain name, and we want the IPv4 address for it. The AAAA record resolves to an IPv6 address instead of an IPv4. Then we have also the CNAME record. So a CNAME record will resolve to another domain name. So for example, it lets us create aliases. For example, here, if we go with store.tryhackme.com, we can see that the alias for it would be shops.myshopify.com, like it's an alias for this one. Then there are an MX record. So MX records are mail exchanger. These resolve to the address of the servers that handle the email for the domain you are querying. And we also have TXT record, and those are just free text fields where any text-based data can be stored. They have multiple uses, but some common ones can be to list servers that have the authority to send an email on behalf of the domains, which is really helpful in the battle against spam and spoofed email. They can also be used to verify ownership of the domain name when signing up for third-party services. So when you make a request for a domain name, the first thing that you do is check on in your local cache if you've previously looked up the address recently, and if not, you send the request to your recursive DNS server. Then the recursive DNS server, which can be provided by your ISP, or you can also choose your own. This server also has a cache, a local cache, and if it's in his cache, it will send back the answer. But if it's not, it will look it up. So how would it look it up? It will start by sending a request to a root DNS server. That root DNS server will tell your recursive DNS server that, I don't know the IP address for this domain. However, I know the TLD server, the TLD name server that can answer for the .com. So when your recursive DNS server gets that IP address for the NS for the TLD server, it will send the same request to the TLD server. This one is the one for .com. The TLD server still doesn't know the IP address for the domain name. However, it does know the IP address or the IP addresses for the authoritative DNS servers for that domain. So it will tell your recursive DNS server that this one, so kip.ns.cloudflare.com, is an authoritative DNS server for tryhackme.com. And then now your recursive DNS server will send the same request again, but this time to the authoritative DNS server. So the one who has authority on the domain name. And it's also the one responsible for storing the DNS record for a particular domain name, and where any updates to your domain name DNS records would be made. So depending on the record type, the DNS record is then sent back to the recursive DNS server where local. So here let's say it's still searching for an IPv4 address that matches that domain name. So the authoritative DNS server will look it up and send the answer, telling your recursive DNS servers, here www.tryhackme.com has 3 IP addresses. These are the ones that it has. And then when the recursive DNS server gets it, it stores a copy in its cache and send the copy to you. So that's the whole making a request, how you have the answer to that. So when we open the website for the practical, what it asks for 3 questions. So the first one is, 4 questions, is what is the CNAME of the shop.website.thm. So we'll go here and select CNAME, and as you can see, it changes the command name to nslookup --type equals CNAME and then website.thm. And we know that the subdomain that is asked is shop, and that's how we end up with this command. Let's run it, and here we go. So the canonical name for it is shops.myshopify.com. Now, next question, it goes with, what is the value of the txt record for the website.thm? So now what we are searching for is a text record. So if you want to search for a text record, what you can do is change this at --type equal txt with the nslookup command. And let's send that. And we end up with the flag. And next one is, what is the numerical priority value for the MX record? So the question is about the mail exchanger record, and as you can see, it changed this time the type to MX. So let's send and here we go. We have the answer. And the last one is, what is the IP address for the A record of the www.website.thm? So we have the subdomain www, and because we are searching for the IPv4 address, we need the type A record. And here we go. We get the IP address. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want, or not if you don't want. You're free to do whatever you want. Anyway, let's meet again next week. Bye!